first instances where you'll find using the manual focus to be very, very beneficial is when you are photographing at night or in low light situations. This is an area or a time of day when the camera really, really struggles to find anything to focus on. So while modern digital cameras have come a long way, autofocus still can't really see in the dark. So if you ever attempt to photograph at night, with, a night sky or anything like that with the autofocus on, you'll probably find that the camera searches and searches and searches and cannot find anything to focus on. Okay, and that's largely because it's simply too dark. So by switching the camera to manual focus, simply switching your lens to manual focus, you can indeed find it a lot easier when you're photographing at night. Now it can be a little bit of trial and error in some instances, but generally if you're photographing a night sky, you want to focus to infinity. Now focusing to infinity is simply when you focus the lens as far as it can go to the object that's furthest away, and that should give you a nice sharp photograph. Another instance when you might consider using manual focus as well is actually for landscape photography too. In most scenarios, photographers want their landscape photographs to be as sharp as possible to show the most detail. And a sharp landscape photograph involves getting the depth of field right, with a good aperture, narrow aperture, but focus plays a role as well. Now, while there are autofocus techniques that work well for landscape photography, such as focusing on the bottom third of the frame, manual focus allows the photographer to choose a distance that would be sharp instead of a point on the photograph, and that's very handy for focusing on, say, mountains in the distance or keeping the foreground in focus and so on as well. So in most scenarios, landscape photographs, autofocus will work well, but if you're really into your landscape photography, you might take a little bit more time with it. You might decide to use the manual focus combined with an aperture of, say, f11 or f16, and you should see an improvement in the sharpness of your landscape photography. Now, when objects are in the foreground is also very useful for using manual focus as well. Most autofocus systems will work by selecting a point near to the center or closest to the camera. Sometimes that can be quite tough to get a sharp shot, with an element that you'd like to keep in the foreground and keep everything else out of focus in the background, or vice versa. You might want to keep something in the foreground out of focus, keep something sharp in the background. So by using manual focus, it's a lot easier. You can decide where exactly you want the focus to be, if you want it to be in the foreground or if you want it to be in the background as well. And then with macro photography too, and this is an area that we briefly spoke about throughout the course as well. Macro photography, a very, very technical area, but using manual focus can make life a lot easier for us. When we get in very, very close to the subject, it can be very difficult for the camera to find the focus, and our cameras have a minimal focusing distance. Okay, so this is as the closest that we can get to an object before the camera can no longer find focus. Sometimes the autofocus really struggles with our minimal focusing distance, so by switching the camera to manual focus, we might find it a lot easier to get in a little bit closer and to keep that focus. So unlike autofocus, manual while shooting, macro is a lot easier to control. And then finally, in scenes where we don't have a lot of contrast, the camera may struggle to find focus. So like this seascape scene here with a lot of mist over the sea, you can see that it's a very low contrast scene. So this can make it very, very difficult for the camera to find somewhere to focus. Okay, the autofocus won't be able to lock onto a subject. So simply switching to the manual focus will help in situations like this as well. Okay, so I hope you